Welcome to this month's training webinar, How to Combat Impostor Syndrome as the Innovative Admin. My name is Julie Perrine, and I'm the founder and CEO of All Things Admin. Do you ever feel like you're not doing enough, even though your executive and your team would be lost without you? Does self-doubt keep you from asking for a promotion or taking on big projects? Are you guilty of negative self-talk that diminishes your confidence and undermines your key skills? If any of these situations sound familiar, you may suffer from imposter syndrome. If you're not familiar with it, imposter syndrome is feeling like a fraud, even if you're successful. To describe it in other terms, it's the experience of feeling like a phony or feeling as though at any moment you're going to be found out as a fraud, or like you don't belong where you are and you only got there through total luck or a fluke of some sort. One of the first times that I remember personally experiencing this was when I got the job as an executive assistant to the president of a national telecommunications company. I immediately wondered if I'd just bitten off more than I could chew. The job was much faster paced than I had been previously accustomed to. The personalities were much more challenging, and the culture of the office was very problematic. And I had all of these skills and experience that they wanted. I was selected out of a large candidate pool and had made it all the way to getting hired for the job. Yet within a couple of days of starting the job, I began to doubt my abilities to do the job that I had just been hired to do. And a lot of administrative professionals suffer from this psychological condition, even as the innovative admin. Imposter syndrome is a term that was first used by psychologists Susanna Imes and Pauline Rose Clance in the early 1970s. And this is a clip from Dr. Clance's book. She says, the term imposter phenomenon was coined and developed by Dr. Imes and myself while we were doing research in 1974. We began to develop and write about the characteristics of these high-achieving people that they had been working with, both as clients and students, who doubted their abilities and competency. And she goes on to say that most people who experience the imposter phenomenon would not put such a label on themselves, nor would they overtly say, I feel like an imposter. And so this imposter phenomenon occurs with great frequency among successful, high-achieving people who've done well in school, have earned college degrees, received awards, praise from their colleagues, and maybe have even advanced rapidly in their careers. But most people still have this lingering thought or feeling that they don't deserve what they've accomplished, or in some way they're going to be found out as a fraud at some point down the road. And so this concept of imposter syndrome then was introduced, and there's been a lot of writing and research and books written about it since, and some of those I share with you in the resources with the webinar handout for today's event. Some research from 2011 suggests that approximately 70% of people will experience at least one episode of imposter syndrome in their lives, and it may be especially prevalent for women who are high achievers also. Some experience it for a limited time, such as like maybe when they're starting a new job, like I just shared with you. Others battle feelings of incompetency throughout their entire life. And I believe gaining a higher level of awareness around what imposter syndrome is and how to combat it arms each of us with the tools that we need to avoid it entirely or to quickly hit reset if and when it does begin to creep up on us. When you begin researching imposter syndrome, one of the top experts in this topic is Dr. Valerie Young, and her website is easy to remember. It's impostorsyndrome.com, and that's imposter spelled I-M-P-O-S-T-O-R, syndrome.com. She says, I've spent close to 4 decades helping people who feel like imposters, fakes, and frauds, and in that time, I've come to an important conclusion. If you want to truly put yourself on the fast track to feeling as bright and capable as you really are, then nothing, and I do mean nothing, will get you there quicker than adjusting your beliefs about what it takes to be competent. Why? Because the imposter syndrome goes beyond a mere lack of confidence. Everyone experiences bouts of self-doubt from time to time, especially when they're attempting something new. But because imposters have insanely high self-expectations, the self-doubt is chronic. So This becomes one of those things that starts to guide some of the decisions and the things that we make about our career path and how we express ourselves and showcase our talents and abilities at the office. And so it's important for us to understand and get our heads wrapped around how we think about ourselves, how we project that to others, and what we need to do to adjust our mindset so that we aren't setting ourselves up for self-sabotage from the word go. Dr. Young says it was after creating some of the research and exercises for her workshops that she made a second discovery. Imposters don't all experience failure-related shame the same way. And the reason is that they don't all define competence the same way. So what emerged from Dr. Young's rules exercise that she did in her workshops were 5 different competence types, each with its own unique focus, which we're going to look at here next in relation to imposter syndrome. And these are the 5 competence types that she identified. The first one is the perfectionist. The perfectionist's primary focus is on how something is done, and this includes how the work is conducted and how it turns out. So one minor flaw in an otherwise perfect performance, or almost perfect performance, or a 99 out of 100, equals failure and thus shame. So it's not surprising then that the perfectionist and imposter syndrome often go hand in hand. If you think about it, perfectionists set excessively high goals for themselves, and when they fail to reach a goal, they experience major self-doubt and worry about measuring up. So whether they realize it or not, this group can also be control freaks, feeling like they want something done right, they have to do it themselves. And if that sounds familiar, this may be one aspect of imposter syndrome that you suffer from. If you're not sure if this applies to you, here are a few other questions you can ask. Have you ever been accused of being a micromanager? Do you have great difficulty delegating, even when you're able to do so? Do you feel frustrated and disappointed in the results? When you miss the insanely high mark on something, do you accuse yourself of not being cut out for the job, or do you let your head spin around on that for several days, trying to figure out how you could have done it better? Do you feel like your work must be 100% of the time? For the perfectionist, success is rarely satisfying because they believe that they could have done even better, and that's neither productive nor healthy. Owning and celebrating achievements is essential if we want to avoid burnout, find contentment, and cultivate self-confidence. So gaining an awareness of whether or not the perfectionist competence focus is causing us issues is really important. The second area is called the expert, and they have this is the knowledge version of the perfectionist. So here the primary concern is on what and how much you know or can do. Because you expect to know everything, even a minor lack of knowledge denotes failure and shame for this type. So here's a few questions. Do you shy away from applying for job postings unless you meet every single educational requirement? Are you constantly seeking out trainings or certifications because you think you need to improve your skills in order to succeed? Even if you've been in your role for some time, can you relate to feeling like you still don't know enough? Do you shudder when someone else says you're an expert? And it's true, there's always more to learn. And as assistants, it's key to keeping us current and relevant in the 21st century office. But striving to bulk up your skill set can certainly help you make strides professionally and keep you competent in the job market. But if we take it too far, the tendency to endlessly seek out more information can actually be a form of procrastination. So practicing what this author calls just-in-time learning can help us acquire a skill when we need it, rather than hoarding knowledge for this false comfort that we're trying to bolster our expert imposter syndrome issues with. You can kind of see the difference here. So realize there's no shame in asking for help when we need it. If you don't know how to do something, ask a coworker, tap into your professional network, ask your supervisor, maybe even enlist the support of a career coach. But when you share what you know, realize that it not only benefits others, but it also helps you heal and mend some of those fraudulent feelings that you're feeling yourself. The third type is the soloist, and the soloist cares mostly about who completes the task. To make it on the achievement list, it has to be you and you alone, because you think you need to do and figure out everything on your own. Needing help is a sign of failure that evokes shame. It's okay to be independent, but not to the extent that you refuse assistance so that you can prove your worth. And if you're not sure if this applies to you, here are a few questions you can ask. Do you firmly feel that you need to accomplish things on your own? The quote, "I don't need anyone's help." Have you ever said that, or does that sound like you? And do you frame requests in terms of the requirements of the project rather than your needs as a person? I'll talk a little bit about self-care towards the end of the presentation, but this ties in here too. Sometimes we're prioritizing the needs of the project over our personal needs in being able to do the work as productively and healthfully as we can, and we start to break things in our physical health sometimes as a result of trying to do too much on our own. The fourth one is the natural genius. The natural genius cares about how and when accomplishments happen. But for this person, competence is measured in terms of ease and speed. The fact that you have to struggle to master a subject or a skill, or that you're not able to bang out your masterpiece on the first try, equals failure, which evokes shame. So these types of imposters set their internal bar impossibly high, just like perfectionists. But the natural genius types don't just judge themselves based on ridiculous expectations, they also judge themselves based on getting things right on the first try. And when they're not able to do something quickly or fluently, their alarm sounds. So if you're not sure if this applies to you, here are a few questions. Are you used to excelling without much effort? Do you have a track record of getting straight A's or gold stars in everything you do? Were you told frequently as a child that you were the smart one in your family or your peer group? Do you dislike the idea of having a mentor or a coach because you can handle things on your own? When you're faced with a setback, does the confidence tumble because you're not performing well, provokes a feeling of shame? And do you often avoid challenges because it's so uncomfortable to try something that you're not great at? The fifth type is the superwoman, superman, super student type. And they measure their competence based on how many roles they can juggle and excel in. And falling short in any role as a parent, a partner, on the home front, or a host, hostess, friend, volunteer, administrative professional, and all the duties that we perform at the office, all evoke shame because they feel like they should be able to handle it all perfectly and easily. And since people who experience this phenomenon are convinced that they're phonies among real deal colleagues, they often push themselves to work harder and harder to measure up. But this is just a false cover-up for their insecurities, and the work overload may harm not only their mental health, but also their relationships with others. And this is why we're going to talk a little bit about self-care today too, because we've got to be paying attention to what we're consciously or subconsciously doing to ourselves as a result of trying to cover up some of these inadequacies that we may be feeling and not putting names on and identifying and addressing in a proactive and productive way. So if you're not sure if the superwoman or superman type applies to you, here are a few questions. Do you stay later at the office than the rest of your team, even past the point that you've completed that day's necessary work? Do you get stressed when you're not working and find downtime completely wasteful? Have you let your hobbies and passions fall by the wayside or be sacrificed to work? Do you feel like you haven't truly earned your title despite numerous degrees and achievements, so you feel pressed to work harder and longer than those around you to prove your worth? Imposter workaholics are actually addicted to the validation that comes from working, not to the work itself. So with that as kind of a framework for some of the imposter types, what causes imposter syndrome in the first place? Actually, anyone can develop imposter syndrome, but there are a few factors that can increase that risk. And one of them is new challenges at the office or in your career in some format, whether it's a new project or a new role or a promotion, maybe working with some new executives or new project teams. Those can create some situations that increase that risk of developing imposter syndrome. You're just uncomfortable and not as stable as you're used to being, and that gives you some pause for maybe some self-doubt and fear to creep in. Growing up with gifted siblings. If you were ever compared to an older or younger sibling who seemed to be smarter or more gifted in academics or sports than you were, that can feed into this also. Growing up as the gifted child. If you were told that you were smarter than or more talented than others around you, you may develop imposter syndrome when you struggle to achieve something. So all of these things kind of feed into the imposter syndrome mindset. It's also important to become aware of what triggers it for you. This list of triggers I found on imposterhood.com, and it's a great list to review and use as an awareness booster in this area. And it was interesting. Pay attention as you, this is a link that's provided in the handout so that you can find it easily. This list, as you go through it, I want you to create some notes next to the things as you read them. Like, what's the first thought or the first feeling that comes to mind for you as you read them? Because at first, when I started to scan through it, I was like, oh, this doesn't cause any issues for me, is it? But then I would get to one of them and I'm like, ooh, like that really caused something to spark inside me. And kind of rate them on a low, medium, and high ranking to give yourself some, again, additional insight into what are the things that maybe create a trigger for you in the first place that you can stay more aware of going forward to be able to sidestep or bypass it the next time so that it doesn't become an issue for you to the degree that maybe it does today. So what are the symptoms of imposter syndrome? Well, there's a really good article on Medical News Today that I'll share a few points from, and I include the link in your resources for you to read the full article as well. But the article says a person's sense of self-doubt can help them to determine a realistic assessment of their achievements, validity, competence, and ability. However, if the sense of doubt is overinflated, it can be more difficult to develop a realistic self-image, and that can lead to symptoms of distress that characterize imposter syndrome. So we're talking about things like worrying that you won't live up to expectations of others, avoiding extra responsibility, maybe even volunteering for things because you view it as a distraction that could compromise the quality of your other work, attributing success to outside factors such as chance or luck or being a fluke that you've gotten to or accomplished what you've accomplished. This is a big one, I think, here too, experiencing job dissatisfaction. People with imposter syndrome tend to feel unhappy in their jobs. They may not feel challenged enough, but a fear of failure or discovery stops them from seeking promotions or extra responsibilities. And there were some research done in 2014 that suggests that people with imposter syndrome tend to stay in their positions because they don't believe that they can do better. And that was just heartbreaking for me when I read that. I'm like, this does not need to be the case, nor should it be. And so I'm going to share some other tips towards the end of the webinar today about ways you can create some better habits to overcome this if this is something you're experiencing. Another one is avoiding asking for a raise. When you undervalue your skills and abilities, that can lead you to deny your worth. And so you may not ask for that raise because you don't believe you deserve it. And that's a problem. That's how we end up with gaps in pay scales that are hard to reconcile later. And the last one, going overboard on tasks and goal setting. Intense fear of failure and the need to be the very best can lead people to overachieve when completing certain tasks. And the article from 2011 also found that those with imposter syndrome set themselves extremely challenging goals and suffer disappointment when they don't achieve them. So that's why it's important to create goals that make sense for you, that challenge you and push you, but that aren't so extremely high that it's almost impossible and you're setting yourself up for failure from the word go in trying to achieve them. I'm a huge fan of creating good incremental goals, and when you've accomplished them, set some more, whether it takes you 3 months to do it or 6 months to do it, or maybe it takes you the whole year to do it. But keeping yourself motivated enough to keep moving forward, but not so overwhelmed that you become disenchanted and completely give up trying it all. Who suffers from imposter syndrome? Well, the answer is any single one of us can suffer from it. As I mentioned earlier, the research indicates that approximately 70% of people will experience at least one episode of imposter syndrome in their lives, and it's especially prevalent among women who are high achievers, but I know a very healthy mix of men and women who have suffered from imposter syndrome. And in your handout, on one of the last couple of pages with links, I share several links to articles that talk about some very high-profile celebrity people, including the former First Lady Michelle Obama, the COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, some very, very successful, very high-profile men and women who have experienced imposter syndrome, and they share their stories in some of those articles. So I encourage you to take a look at that, because it's not just us. It's not just this group of administrative professionals that I'm primarily talking to today. It is a vast array of people across every kind of an industry and income level imaginable that are experiencing and dealing with these things. So if you're wondering if you suffer from imposter syndrome, maybe just in what we've talked about so far, you've identified a few areas that you're like, ooh, that sounded like me. Well, you can actually do an assessment or take a little self-evaluation test that was developed by Dr. Clance. And I've included the link. It's a PDF file that you can download, and you can self-score on the assessment to see where you fall with the imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome tendencies that sometimes show up for people. So once you've educated yourself on imposter syndrome, and I have identified maybe some of the areas where you know you've got some weak spots that you'd like to address specifically, what we need to do next is look at how we overcome it. And I love this quote by Dr. Valerie Young. The only way to stop feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like an imposter. Or as I like to frame it, in these terms. If you want to overcome imposter syndrome, unleash the power of innovation in your administrative career. I believe that the innovative admin is uniquely positioned to overcome imposter syndrome by understanding what the innovation journey and developing habits that prepare you for the unexpected twists and turns of your job and career look like. You can successfully banish imposter syndrome. And what I want to do is go through a few key elements to show you how I've applied these things throughout my career and how these principles work and look as you implement them in your career as well. I read that non-imposters think differently about three things: competence, failure, and fear. And so the first foundational component of becoming the innovative admin is to choose the innovation mindset. Mindsets are those powerful beliefs that we hold. They influence how we act, how we think. They influence how we make decisions. And when I was writing my first book, The Innovative Admin, I came across Carol Dweck's book called Mindset. And in her book, she addresses two mindsets that typically prevail: the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And I've renamed them slightly. I refer to them as the status quo mindset and the innovation mindset. But the fixed mindset or the status quo mindset believes that your intelligence is static. Your qualities are carved in stone, and it creates this urgency for you to prove yourself over and over. That sounds a little bit like some of the imposter syndrome elements that we've just read about. The status quo or fixed mindset leads to a desire to look smart and therefore a tendency to avoid challenges, get defensive, and give up easily when obstacles appear. They see effort as fruitless, they ignore useful negative feedback, and they feel threatened by the success of others. As a result, the person with this mindset may plateau early and achieve less than his or her full potential. Now let's contrast that with the growth mindset, or as I refer to it, the innovation mindset. The innovation mindset, however, believes that the hand you're dealt is just the starting point for development. Intelligence can be developed, which leads to a desire to learn and therefore a tendency to embrace challenges, persist in the face of obstacles, use effort as the path to mastery, learn from criticism, and find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. As a result, they reach ever higher levels of achievement, and it's based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. And even though that may differ in how that's achieved by different people with just basic talents and strengths that we're born with, it can also be developed in some of the things that we put time and effort into. So everyone can change and grow through application and experience. And this innovation mindset will help you think differently and more innovatively about competence, failure, and fear also. And I think that's huge for us to think about as we try to create better habits and a better mindset around how we approach our work and our career as a whole. The second foundational component to becoming more innovative is to understand how the innovation mindset works. When you know what the path looks like, it helps you navigate the twists and turns more proactively. When I was writing my first book, I came across this innovation mindset model created by Mike Doherty. And this is the basic path or evolution of an innovation, or bringing an idea to life, implementing something new or different. And this was really helpful for me in understanding why sometimes when you're in the middle of a project and you get started with something and everybody's excited about it and you take off and go, but you get to those spots sometimes where things just feel like they're stalling out completely and you don't know how to get it moving or going in the right direction again, and people are frustrated and timelines are taking longer than they're supposed to and things go over budget. And this is all part of the process. Innovation is neither cheap or fast or efficient. It's messy and it takes time. And so anything worth doing, whether it's a big project that your team is working on or it's a career evolution for you, it's going to take time, and there's going to be some spots where things do not feel as comfortable as you want them to. And that's how you know you're on the right track. So what I want to do is share what each of these phases of the innovation mindset look like so that you can understand as you begin to experience them, or as you identify these phases of where you're at with projects that your teams are working on, how you can help encourage and push them through to get to the next phase that they're struggling to move into. So the first phase is dreaming. And this is where the process begins. That great big idea, the next big thing. Everybody's excited about it. Optimism abounds. And I know when I was writing my first book, The Innovative Admin, this was, you share your idea with people, they encourage you to do it, and this is a great idea. You map out your plan, and so you dive in and you get started with the process of writing the book or tackling that big project. The second phase, though, inevitably, is doubting. Things don't go as planned, and you face the potential of an idea that may not work or that feels like a failure before you ever get started. It's not as easy as you think it would be. At this stage, it's important to realize that failure is a natural and useful element in innovation. It forces us to learn from failed efforts and to adapt our original ideas or determine if it's time to try something else. So failure is actually a good thing. It not only forces us to analyze things from a different perspective, but sometimes our ideas aren't ready for prime time yet. Maybe it needs to be a different time frame. Maybe it needs to have different people or resources attached to it. But other times, sometimes it's just a matter of surrounding yourself with the right people to get you to where you need to go. I know when I was writing my book, the discipline to sit and write consistently was severely lacking for me. And it's hard to write a book if you can't sit down and get words on a page. I had a really good friend who was diagnosed with cancer, and I was struggling watching her and her path and knowing what I was trying to accomplish and just thinking about, if my life were to end quickly, what would I have wanted to leave this world with? And to have started something and to have not gotten through it just because I was procrastinating, or I was suffering from perfectionism, or I was, suffering from imposter syndrome in the sense of the expert or the soloist, I needed to find a better way to move into the next phase. And so what I did was surround myself with some key team members that I knew could help push me through, and enlisted the help of an additional coach and enlisted the support of a couple of mentors. And at this third phase of quitting or persevering, this is what truly separates innovators from dreamers. You've got to be willing to try some different things to make your idea happen. And sometimes you do realize, this isn't the right time. I need to put this on the shelf for a while. Or once you get into it, you realize, this was a bad idea entirely. We need to just ditch it and try something else. And this was where, when I was writing my book, that getting myself surrounded by the right people gave me that extra push and accountability, and eliminating some of the distractions that I had been allowing, and getting that big picture, that big vision out in front of me, helped keep me motivated to push forward and make progress. And as my husband and I now say, to push through the bottom of the innovation curve. And that's a phrase that we still use in a lot of personal things we're dealing with, but also in our work. When we're struggling or something's not going well, where are you at on the innovation curve? What can I do to help you push through into the next phase of whatever you're struggling to get through? The fourth phase is transforming. And as I said earlier, the innovation process isn't pretty or glamorous. There's going to be a lot of junk that sometimes rises to the top that you've got to let go or change in order to move forward. But you realize that this journey you're on is always going to have these peaks and valleys if you're really trying to do something worth accomplishing in your life and career. And when you invest the effort to clear space, new and better things always follow. And so at this phase, I began to push through and see some of the benefits and rewards of what my writing and my book was going to be able to offer to my audience that I was writing it for. As I began to share it with a few people to get some feedback, the input that they were giving me wasn't just how to improve the book, but it was giving me feedback on how they were going to apply some of these things in their life and career. And so my confidence then was starting to be built on the depth of knowledge and experience that I had as the person writing the book, but also as an administrative professional, and as I did the research to prepare some of the different aspects that I wanted to share in the book. I became even more transformed by the experience myself, not just what I was trying to put together for my audience. And the fifth phase then is the championing phase. And this is where you truly, you're up on the high end of feeling like you've got the accomplishment almost nailed. The clarity and conviction is the highest it's ever been. That comes from that length of time that you've been working on this. And when you've repeatedly put this much effort into fighting through the challenges that lead to these transformational events, you gain confidence. And typically, a healthy dose of recognition from those you're working with on the project as well. And this is one of those things that for me, when I first finished my book, I was scared to death to share it with anyone. You talk about having imposter syndrome. I was like, is anyone going to read it? Are they going to think that it's helpful? Is it really going to be able to help anybody? I knew these things had helped me. I had seen them help others. I had done extensive research to make sure that what I was sharing was valid and legitimate and was going to be helpful. But I still doubted the impact that it might be able to have on people. And eventually over time, as people started sharing how they had applied these things and what it had done for them and where it was taking them in different trajectories than where they had been on prior to reading my book, that became one of those moments where finally I could kind of breathe that sigh of relief and be like, oh, it is doing what I had hoped and knew it could do, but was doubting myself after I got it completed as to whether or not it could really do it. And so I am here today talking to all of you as a champion of innovation in your career because I've pushed through this curve now over and over and over again. And this is how you spread this mindset and culture through your teams and your departments and your company. One single person can make a difference. You individually can make a difference. And you start by making that difference in yourself. And when people start to see the results and the things that you're accomplishing and changing and shifting, they start to ask questions. They want to know what you're doing, what's working, why are you doing it like that? And this is an opportunity for all of us to positively influence our teams and the executives that we're supporting by understanding what this journey looks like and being able to then champion this journey through innovation for each and every one of them as their support team. The other thing that I have found incredibly helpful throughout the process of writing my book, but also for other big projects and ambitious things I'm trying to accomplish in my life and career and my business now, and that is journaling. This is a tabloid-sized journal that I had created. I took a bunch of tabloid sheets of paper, took it to the copy shop, had them spiral bind it, and I keep this as a way for me to quickly map things out or to just jot notes down. In this case, I wanted to document what happened at each phase of the innovation curve in writing my first book, because I knew at some point down the road I was going to be able to look back at this and analyze, what worked, what didn't work. Okay, when I go through this the next time writing the second book or working on the next big product that I want to develop or put out there, reading back through some of this was actually encouraging, because when you hit those feelings the second time, you're like, oh, this is normal. Okay, so how did I get through it last time? What can I do to quickly get through it this time? And you can quickly push through some of these things more productively or quickly than maybe you did the first time because you just weren't prepared for it to happen. But looking back and using history as a way of teaching us how to do it better in the future, journaling is huge for the innovative admin on this path. The third foundational key is to turn your thinking upside down. Innovative thinkers regularly challenge the status quo. Now, there's a lot of ways you can challenge the status quo. My encouragement to you is all to do it politely and respectfully, but it's okay to ask questions, to say, okay, this is how we've always done it. Great. Can you give me a little context for this? Why? Like, why did we start doing it like this? Have we thought about considering doing it differently here or here? Because I could see where this might be more efficient if we tried this particular procedure or implemented this system in this particular aspect of the flow of things. And so the more curious you can become about what's working and what isn't and why, the better you can help impact shifting how things work for you, but also for your entire teams. And when you evaluate unanticipated events or things that don't go the way you think they should have, to see what you can learn from them so that you can do them better the next time, that will continue to fuel better ideas and better strategies going forward too. The fourth foundational key is you must collaborate to innovate. It's that old adage, two heads are better than one. And the more we share our knowledge and information and ideas with others, the better our own ideas will become. When I was writing my book, the first one, I was so nervous to share it with someone else. I was concerned about people critiquing my work or me not. I didn't want to put something out there that wasn't correct, but yet I was scared that somebody's going to tell me this is a bunch of baloney. And so that imposter syndrome kept plaguing me throughout that process. And when I actually did share it with another friend of mine who is a good friend, mentor, one of my trusted advisors, she's also a copy editor, And I said, listen, there's something about this that I'm not quite comfortable with in this first section, but I don't know what it is or how to fix it. And so just, can you read this and tell me, A, does it make sense? B, do you think it's valid and accurate from your experience, as she was also a career administrative professional who had transformed her expertise into her own business? And give me some input, and held my breath waiting for her response. And when she came back, her response was, listen, this is fantastic. Here's the little tweak you need to make, and I think the rest of this is going to flow much more smoothly, and the issues that you're concerned about in this first section are going to resolve themselves. And she was absolutely right. Because I was willing to share myself, to be vulnerable, to let her take my manuscript and start marking it up, it got better. Another interesting thing happened. I asked my husband to proof my book for me. And my husband is an English major who is also a paralegal. So to say he gets into the details and wants his grammar and punctuation and words to be correct is an understatement. So whenever I give him something to proof or to edit, he always makes me give him a red pen to do it with. So I print out my manuscript. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick. And I get the red pen and I hand him the stack, and I, again, hold my breath, just knowing it's going to come back with red marks all over it that I'm going to need to edit and update and tweak. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? It needs to be done. If I need to make this better, he can help me do it. But what was the most amazing thing to me when I got that manuscript back was, yeah, there were a few grammar-related things and a few punctuation things he had made recommendations for, but the majority of the red in the margins was not critiquing the book or changes I needed to make. It was how he personally was going to implement what he had just read. And that totally transformed my thinking in ways I can't even begin to explain today. I was asking for help and input for him to help make my work better, and my work had given him ideas for how he could improve his career and things he was doing. So we never know the impact that we're going to potentially have on another single individual, and we have to be collaborative in our mindset to share those ideas and thoughts with others so that we can help make their ideas better, but so that they also share those ideas with us so we can make our ideas better. And there's a quote that I came across when I was writing my book. Let's see if I can find it here quick. It's referred to as the lone inventor myth. And it said it was in the book by Braden Kelly called Stoking Your Innovation Bonfire. While many people give Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and the modern-day equivalent, Dean Kamen, credit for being lone inventors, the fact is that the lone inventor myth is just that, a myth. All these gentlemen had labs full of people who shared their passion for creative pursuits. So if you want to attract innovative minds to you, you've got to cultivate an environment around you and be willing to collaborate and share yourself. And that means that you really need to create your own innovation lab as well. I like to use the word lab as an acronym. The L stands for look for lab members. I want you to identify a positive, innovative list of people that you would like to include in your new personal innovation lab. Maybe start a journal or a notebook or your innovation binder and just jot down some lists of people that you would like as potential lab members. The A stands for ask, for coaching, mentoring, and support. We have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. It's okay to ask for help, to ask for input, to ask for advice. Make a list of ways then that you can regularly interact with or spend time with or learn from some of those people that you identify that you would like to have as lab members. Maybe it's scheduling a lunch date or just, meeting up for coffee. In some cases, I have what I refer to as my list of virtual mentors. It's people that I read their blogs, I read their books, I connect with them on social media sites. I don't know them personally, but I'm still learning from and benefiting from their advice that they share through the digital media that we have accessible to us today. The B stands for build your network and be a collaborator. I want you to make a commitment to yourself to do at least one thing this week that causes you to interact in some way with one of your personal advisory board members, somebody in your innovation lab. And I want you to repeat that on a weekly basis. This is how you keep your network alive and active and vibrant, and it's how you also help combat imposter syndrome. When you need help, you can quickly reach out to somebody to do that gut check with and get back on track and get your thinking reset much more quickly when you have this lab of people surrounding you, supporting you, and helping you on your innovation journey. The last foundational key is to know yourself inside out. The better you know yourself, the more success you're going to see and experience, because self-awareness is key to all of this. And once you know you very well, get to know those around you, because knowledge is really powerful here. This is how we can proactively manage communication and interactions with those that we work with and support in much more productive ways. I am a huge fan of the Myers-Briggs type indicator tool from a personality assessment perspective. There's also the Strengths Finder tool. You can purchase the book Strengths Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath. There's also an assessment called the Standout Assessment that's put together by Marcus Buckingham, and it combines strengths in the workplace, which is also another helpful assessment tool. But any of these are good. There's DISC, Predictive Indicator, the Passion Test. There's all kinds of tools out there. Any of them are great. They all have value, and all of them can give you specific insights into your needs so that you can better know yourself to more precisely ask for help and resources that you need for achieving success. And the better you know this information, the better you're going to be able to apply it to every interaction in improving relationships, strengthening partnerships, and building a better lab environment for everyone that you interact with day in and day out. The second half of my book also looks at the structural components of becoming the innovative admin. And these really are just habits that help you cultivate innovative thinking in all these different aspects of your career. And when you're continually engaged in learning and you've surrounded yourself with this safety net of advisors and cheerleaders, and you're expanding the way you think about your work and career as a whole, you have many of the tools that you need to effectively combat imposter syndrome, and in many cases, to avoid it entirely. So I want to share a few final thoughts on combating imposter syndrome as the innovative admin from my own personal experiences. And the first one is to stay focused on your individual career path. Don't compare yours to someone else's. And I think a strategic administrative career plan can help you do this. One of the things that I've seen with assistants in particular is we start to think that we should have the title that so-and-so has because our responsibilities are the same that so-and-so has, or that we should be doing things at a higher level because we've been in this position for X number of years. Well, or because we've seen this other person that we work with we think they're getting paid more, or we know they're getting paid more, or they've got better perks or benefits of some sort. Anytime you start comparing yourself to someone else, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're setting yourself up for all kinds of dissatisfaction with your job and your career. So staying focused on your career path and identifying where are you now, where are you going, how are you going to get there, and what are the things that you're documenting along the way to identify these are the achievements, the accomplishments that I have specifically achieved throughout my career, and this is how they equate to dollars and cents in savings of time, savings of effort, improvement in procedures or systems for my office, and making sure that we get those things highlighted specifically in our annual performance review, in our professional portfolio, in all of the tools that we're using to represent ourselves as a professional on this career path. And anytime you can start pulling this information together in one central place, and I think a strategic career plan document or a OneNote notebook or a binder where you are specifically putting effort into thinking about these things on a monthly, quarterly, and for sure, at the very least, an annual basis. This will help you document your successes and accomplishments along the way, which is huge in helping you stay focused on the right things and to keep imposter syndrome at bay. And so knowing what's going to be right for you and that you are the only one who can create your strategic career plan, and yours is not going to look like anyone else's because you have unique strengths, unique abilities, your personality type factors into this. All of this is uniquely yours. This will help you keep your focus in the right place and pursuing the right things for you. My second point here is to educate yourself on imposter syndrome so that you can be more aware when it surfaces and more proactive in squashing it before it fully takes hold. I've shared a lot of resources with you today, and there's 2 pages of links and some additional books and videos in the handout that I want you to spend some time with over the next few days and weeks. And stay committed to lifelong learning and skills development in your field. Complacency will cause us to stagnate, but learning forces us to expand how we think, and that is always a good thing. The third thing I want to have you do is challenge your own self-talk. Those negative thoughts or negative things that you say to yourself. Would you let your little girl or your little boy say those things to themselves? And if the answer is no, then don't do it to yourself either. Your body believes everything you tell it. And so you have got to be very quick at catching yourself saying, "Oh, Julie, that was an idiotic move. What'd you do that for?" Well, I just called myself an idiot. Of course I'm going to start thinking I'm an idiot because I'm telling myself I'm an idiot, and I keep reinforcing that self-talk. You've got to stop that. And so the minute you catch yourself saying something negative, find a way to turn it positive. Oh, that was not a move that I had intended to make. I'm going to learn from this and make sure that I find a way to do this better going forward so that I don't make that same misstep again in the future. What's your new path, your new plan of action? How did you just resolve what you wanted to overcome and put some better thoughts in your head about how you're going to do it the next time? Mel Robbins did a mindset reset challenge back in January of this year, and you can still find it on her website, I believe at melrobbins.com/mindset reset. I highly encourage you to check into it. It's absolutely free to do, and you can still get access to all of the daily videos that she did. The posts were all on social media as well. But she gets into the science behind how we think and how that impacts our actions and ultimately impacts our success day in and day out. And the little daily habits that we create, everything from where we put our phone when we go to bed at night to what we do first thing in the morning when we wake up to how we get our day started, all of those little habits systematically change how you think, and those things systematically help you change your entire life. I started the challenge in January when she kicked it off, and I could not believe some of the immediate differences that I noticed in some of my behaviors and some of the habits that I was becoming lax or not paying as much attention to in my daily practices. And so I encourage you to check it out and challenge that self-talk and challenge what you think about yourself so that you're putting something more positive and productive in that space instead. And throughout my career, as I said earlier, I've been very deliberate about maintaining a personal advisory board or this personal innovation lab as my ultimate safety net. These are people who know a lot more than I do about certain topics. They are trusted colleagues. They are people who challenge me to think better or differently about the things that I'm struggling with or asking for advice on. Some of them have been mentors for many years. Others I've engaged with for professional coaching on key areas when I needed it. But they are my first line of defense and my ultimate gut check when imposter syndrome tries to rear its head. I know that I can pick up the phone and shoot off a quick text message or send an email or make a quick call and get some immediate feedback from almost anyone on my advisory board. And they know that they can do the same with me. And this has been one of the best strategies for helping me overcome or avoid imposter syndrome entirely more times than I can count. It does mean getting comfortable with vulnerability and having open, honest conversations about what is happening to create the imposter feelings. But it's the best way that I know to accurately distinguish between perception and reality and get my thinking back on track as quickly as possible. And my final tip here is to commit to focused self-care. The better rested, fed, and fueled your body is, the better it can perform and handle what your life and career throws at you. You'll respond to stimulus more productively, you'll think through challenges and scenarios more objectively, and you'll be likely to catch and contain the limiting beliefs before they take you off course. The more stressed, depleted, and maxed out we are, the more likely it's going to be that imposter syndrome can creep in. We just don't have the strength to focus and to fight it adequately, and so it becomes this vicious cycle that takes us further down a path that you don't even want to embark upon in the first place. And I was just reading earlier today about doing an emotional an emotional detox, I believe is what it was called. And they basically were talking about how toxic fear, doubt, second guessing, all of those things that we do to ourselves when we're struggling, how toxic those are to our overall mental and emotional states of mind and ultimately our physical health then. So creating a consistent habit of focused self-care will help you better manage every aspect of your life, personally and professionally. Self-care is not a luxury, it's a requirement. And if you're interested in learning more about what I mean by focused self-care, we have a free article on our website at allthingsadmin.com that is specifically about creating a better plan for focused self-care. And you can find more details on that there. So before we close, I have a few things I'd like to encourage you to do as you're considering what we've talked about today. And the first one is to complete the Clance Imposter Phenomenon questionnaire. I think it'll give you some insights into where you fall in this equation of dealing with or addressing some of your own imposter syndrome thoughts or mindsets. And then number two, identify where it shows up for you. If any of the things we talked about today triggered for you, it's probably an awareness level that you can raise so that when it happens again, you can catch it and stop it or get the right people involved to help you rethink the process around addressing what you're dealing with. Number three, read through some of the resources that I've shared. There's lots of links and articles out there, some good books. This is a topic that continues to come up. I've seen it in a lot of online groups that I'm a part of. It's come up with some of the professionals and colleagues that I'm working with. And so this is a topic, there's a lot of resources out there. Tap into them and learn as much as you can about it. And you'll also get some good tactics and strategies for how to overcome it at the same time. Number four, become acutely aware of your self-talk and how it's impacting you. Catching yourself as you're saying it helps you then catch yourself before you say it so that you can stop saying things that are demeaning and belittling to yourself. And then create a list of 2 or 3 ways that you are going to proactively address imposter syndrome. What are 2 or 3 things from today's session that you identified as, you know what, I could do something there, or I can make this shift or this change that would help me with that? And addressing the 9 key habits of the innovative admin, which we didn't have time to go into today, but you can find details about those on my website at theinnovativeadmin.com or on our blog at allthingsadmin.com. And just the foundational components that we talked about here. What are some things you can do to address proactively imposter syndrome in creating some new habits for you? And then identify who is part of your personal innovation lab of advisors that's going to be supporting you. You don't have to tell them. It's not about, calling a board meeting together, but in your mind, putting some thoughts around, okay, if I need help with this, who am I going to call? If I need, you already have some of those people in place. You just maybe haven't thought about it in this context. But pay attention to people maybe you haven't met yet that you would like to develop a relationship with, whether that's a virtual mentor online or somebody that eventually you're able to meet in person and make a connection with formally. And then number 7, explore those 9 habits of the innovative admin and expand your innovation potential. what we're talking about today is not unique to the innovative admin. It's not unique to people who are in any career field in general. It is something a wide and vast group of people deals with. But what I've put together for you in the innovative admin book in particular, I think can help you proactively address a lot of the things that we've talked about today. One of the mottos that I adopted early in my entrepreneurial journey as a virtual assistant was progress, not perfection. And this has helped me keep my focus on learning and improving versus stalling out and stagnating. And it has also served as a positive reminder to keep pushing forward. With a better understanding of imposter syndrome and the innovation journey in combination with developing habits that prepare you for the unexpected twists and turns along the way, I know you have the tools you need to address and successfully banish imposter syndrome from your job and career. And I wish you every success on your personal innovation journey.